Hello, and thanks for joining us for In the News. We are examining some recent studies on the potential ability of sunlight and vitamin D to reduce the severity of COVID-19 outcomes in patients. The studies point to the importance of vitamin D for general health, and specifically how it supports immune function in the body's fight against viruses, even greatly reducing the risk of dying from COVID-19.
Before we get into the studies, bear in mind what we've learned about COVID, that it seems to affect people across a broad spectrum. Some people that test positive seem to have never shown any symptoms. For others, it seems to be like a common cold that lasts 7 to 14 days. But according to the WHO, about 20% of people develop severe symptoms with difficulty breathing. Older people and those with underlying medical problems like high blood pressure, heart and lung problems, diabetes, or cancer are at higher risk of developing more serious symptoms once infected.
Before we get into the studies, we're going to check out a clip from Dr. Rhonda Patrick speaking about vitamin D and immune health on the powerful Joe Rogan Experience.
Elderly are like insanely more deficient. I forgot the exact number. Obese also. Obese people are like 3 times more likely to be vitamin D deficient in the United States.
Why is that?
Because vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, and it's been shown to be 50% less bioavailable. So you have to, after you make it in your skin, it's stored in fat. And, it's released when, basically into the bloodstream, and then it gets converted into a hormone. This hormone regulates 5%, more than 5% of the human protein-encoded human genome. That's a lot of, it's a hormone. Like, can you imagine just walking around without testosterone? You're a man. That's a hormone. I mean, because there's a lot of people that are deficient in vitamin D. And it's a steroid hormone. It gets converted into a hormone. Wow. This isn't just a vitamin, It's important. It's really important.
What is happening to people when they are vitamin D? What's happening in the vitamin D deficient? What is happening in the body that's causing their immune system this hormone deficiency, not having this vitamin D? Whether it's through sun exposure or
there's
diet.
Lots of things. I mean, there's vitamin D receptors on your immune cells, and the reason for that is because when the vitamin D hormone binds to the receptor, it activates all these genes, and that the genes do stuff that are, regulate immune function. There are genetic polymorphisms. So there are people that have variations in genes that cause them to genetically have lower vitamin D. And so this is called Mendelian randomization, when you can take a person that has a genetically, they're genetically low vitamin D. So you're not categorizing them based on their vitamin D levels. You're categorizing them based on their gene. And those people are more likely to die from respiratory infections, just based on that gene alone. There was a study that was over 25 randomized controlled trials. People that were given a vitamin D supplement, varying doses, either weekly or daily, monthly didn't work. The people with low baseline vitamin D levels, so people that were deficient, they were 50% less likely to have a respiratory tract infection if they were taking the vitamin D supplement. Over 50%, actually. And people that had already normal levels still had a protective effect. They were 10% less likely. So even people that were already considered normal, taking a vitamin D supplement helped prevent the respiratory tract infection.
Can you take too much vitamin D?
Yes, you can. You can.
What's too much?
So the tolerable upper intake has been set by the Nutrition Board, the Institute of Medicine, to be 4,000 IUs a day. But there's been studies that have shown that people that have taken 10,000 IUs a day for multiple years haven't had any hypercalcemia or had problems.
We often hear about the importance of sunlight, but it looks like vitamin D is even more critical than we thought. What's your immediate thought on this?
Well, I am always one for more beach time, more sun time, more margarita time. But I am learning from this study that vitamin D is not just about playing in the sun. It also helps to build our immunity. And there's a strong correlation between staying healthy during COVID and getting enough sunshine.
So basically, get a lot of sunshine is what you're saying?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Now, let's hear what Dr. Anthony Cardillo has to say about the benefits of vitamin D from ABC7 News in California.
To explain the very latest research, we're joined by Dr. Anthony Cardillo, CEO of Mend Urgent Care and ER physician. Thanks so much for joining us again. So tell us about the research that shows why vitamin D levels may be linked to a person's risk of COVID-19.
Well, vitamin D is a phenomenal molecule in our body. It's actually a prohormone, goes through synthesis in the skin, that goes to the liver, the kidney. It becomes a molecule called calcitriol. And we have receptors all over our body. Almost every cell in our body has a receptor for this calcitriol, particularly the immune system. And so we've known for a long time through independent cell research that vitamin D does boost and modulate the immune system, as well as the other stuff we know about cardiovascular, as well as bone health. And so studies were coming out of China early on when people were getting sick in the hospital. And they started realizing that people that were the sickest in the hospital and had the longest duration of illness had the lowest levels of vitamin D. And these were retrospective observational studies that were done looking at the population in China that had gotten infected. So based upon that, they looked at a lot of patients and realized that those that were the sickest had the lowest vitamin D levels. Now, it could also mean that people that are sick in general have low vitamin D levels, but nevertheless, it's an important piece of information demonstrating there's another molecule that we probably should be supplementing with to decrease our risk overall. So that's where the data is coming from these observational studies. There is a randomized clinical trial going on right now at Harvard to look at this to see actually is there a difference. But this is the data coming out from China right now.
The retrospective study found hospital patients with the lowest levels of vitamin D were sick the longest. He also notes that vitamin D is converted to a hormone with myriad functions. It boosts and modulates the immune and cardiovascular systems, as well as fortifying bones.
So this is the first time I'm hearing about a correlation between vitamin D and corona. Was this something that you were aware of before, or is it like new to?
I think, I'd always heard that vitamin D was crucial for your health, but I didn't realize that it fortified the immune system so much, and also that it was so effective for respiratory infections specifically.
Exactly. I mean, growing up in Jamaica, and I'm sure a lot of people at home who grew up in warm countries probably heard like wives' tales where they're like, yeah, get sunshine, it will heal you. I've heard instances where people have been deathly sick and they get exposed to sun. Even with asthma, I've heard that sunshine has helped to heal the lungs. So it's not entirely new, but I would like to hear more from our healthcare system about vitamin D.
Oh, for sure, yeah. In my case, it was more so put on sunscreen, but I hear what you're saying.
In Jamaica, not so much. Yeah. Now that we're all on the same page, let's consider the study by Dr. Eamon Laird, Professor Rose Ann Kenny, and Professor John Rhodes from April this year.
This study, conducted in April, examined the connection between COVID-19 mortality rates between countries south and north of 35 degrees latitude as a way to test for the importance of vitamin D. This graph plots latitude against mortality and shows the findings of the study. The countries below the latitude of 35 degrees north have a lower mortality rate from COVID-19, while countries above 35 degrees, basically ones that receive less sunlight in the winter and spring, have a higher mortality from COVID. And I believe it is important to point out that this study came out in April, and while the geography of the cases may have changed dramatically in the interim, this study is a snapshot of the data they had then in the spring, when the difference in availability of sunlight would have been more pronounced.
The researchers found that the only exception were Nordic countries like Sweden and Iceland, where vitamin D supplementation is widespread and so deficiency is less common. Sweden has been an advocate of herd immunity, challenging international health organizations' views on distancing and detention. Within the past week, with a population of about 10 million, Sweden's COVID-19 daily death count has been down to single digits. I wonder who are the organizations they're talking about.
So does this mean we should maximize the sun exposure we get?
Absolutely. I'm saying it's summertime. Everyone try to be outside as much as possible. We know that in winter, people are more susceptible to getting colds. Obviously, it's darker. And something that I wish more people thought about is how sunshine puts you in a better mood. It actually puts you in a place where you're happier, therefore your immune levels are being naturally boosted that way as well. Yeah. Plus again, the beach, what's wrong with it? Go get it. Let's travel to the southeastern side of the world where Dr. Mark Alapio from the University of Southeastern Philippines has looked at how vitamin D supplementation can possibly improve clinical outcomes of patients infected with COVID-19. Based on his study of 212 confirmed cases of COVID, Dr. Alapio found that vitamin D levels were lowest in critical cases but highest in mild cases. According to Dr. Alapio, an increase in vitamin D levels in the body could improve clinical outcomes, while a decrease in vitamin D levels could worsen those outcomes.
Let's look at the situation on the local scope here in Toronto.
We're here in Kensington Market on this beautiful summer's day where we'll be chatting with some Torontonians about how they have been getting their sunlight during and after lockdown. All right, so how has the lockdown affected your sun exposure and in result your mental and emotional health?
Well, I've found that, obviously with all of us being locked in a lot more, with the summer months coming on, I've taken every opportunity to go out and get as much sunshine as possible. And on a plus side too, quite a few of us have caught up for picnics because I think normally at times because there's not a lot that's open as well. So I wouldn't say it's not necessary. There's been a lot of positives. And we also have a workout group, which is very exciting. We mainly do it virtually, but every now and then we've been trying to catch up in parks and actually work out together. So I think it's a nice way to get a bit of sunshine, to get a bit of social interaction, to have a little bit of food thrown in there. And it's kind of really nice for friendships too. But I do think you have to work extra hard because of COVID and I guess all the restrictions as well to make sure that you do get your sun, you do get your interaction, and you also have to stay fit and healthy. So it's something that takes a lot of conscious effort, which I think then helps your mental health as well, obviously. I think exercise helps your mental health.
All right, so I just want to speak to you about why you think sunlight is so important. So let's have you start, Jack.
Sunlight is important because it helps flowers grow, and also vitamin D is very good for your body and skin, but don't get too much of it or else your body will get burnt.
Definitely. Did you get sunscreen on today?
I actually forgot.
That's okay, you've got your baseball cap. So what has been your experience with lockdown and getting enough vitamin D while you're inside?
Well, the first 3 weeks I was... Well, first of all, I was in the States at a friend's cottage for a week, and I didn't hear the initial hoopla about it all. And so I had friends that were like, you better come home. And I'm like, I just had imagining being in a Trump jail or something. And I was prepared with green dye and instruments. And I thought, okay, well, we're going to make the best of it. And I just got through the border a day before they closed it. And so I was really not initially worried, and I was just going to resume my park life and do what I do. But my father called me and was very, very worried, and he and that kind of panicked me a bit. And so I stayed in for 3 weeks, and I'm like, is the virus going to come through the window? I was totally freaked out like the rest of the world for 3 weeks. And then I'm like, I need to go outside. Part of my health is to go outside every day and to get sunlight. And so I thought, well, I might be arrested sitting under a tree in the sun, but I'm willing to risk that. And so I just kept going outside, and I just felt normal again instead of panicked. And so that's...
Definitely. And getting the sunlight now definitely is reinstilling that sense of normalcy that we've missed for so long. Well, what about your experience, Alyssa? Well, how has lockdown impacted your sun exposure?
Well, for the first couple months, we didn't leave the house much, but we do have a balcony, so we made sure to get outside on the balcony every day to, keep our mental health, happy, so that we could stay happy and, stay healthy. Yeah.
Definitely. And what about for you, Vanessa? How did you find your mental health improving now that you can enjoy the great outdoors again?
Yeah, definitely. Being outside makes a massive difference. I live really close to the water, so getting out every day for my lunch break and working from home was really helpful.
So could you tell me a little bit more about just your personal experience with getting sunlight and how it has affected your physical health?
Sure. Well, many years ago I had blood poisoning, and I remember going to the hospital and they gave me antibiotics, and I think in those cases that's a good thing. So then I suntanned naked for 3 days, and I drank lemon water, and it's a very 60s, 50s natural hygienist point of view. And I went back and checked my levels, and I had no illness at all ever again. So I believe that it was cured by sunlight and lemon water. I know, there's a lot of scientific naysayers, but I mean, it's if you get results, and I got results.
And the results speak for themselves. Yeah, thank you very much. So I was wondering if you could reflect on how getting sunlight has improved your well-being as well.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, someone that I guess I've always liked a lot of sunlight, and I guess originally being from Sri Lanka, I'm used to being in warm climates as well. So I think sunlight is crucial for your mental health, your physical health. I think it's absolutely essential. So I think, and with COVID, you need to work harder to get it as well, because it's not, you need to make more of an effort to get out. I think because your day-to-day activities aren't always there. Like you don't go to work the way you always did in an office. So I think we are a lot more cooped up. But yeah, I think you need to get as much as you can, would be my take on it.
Definitely. Thank you so much. So how do you all feel today now that you've been soaking up the sunlight today? What are your immediate reactions to this gorgeous weather? Let's go in a circle.
Definitely that we need to get some sunscreen on. We can feel it. I can feel it. Yeah, that would be mine.
I don't think I need sunscreen because I feel just fine.
Sun can do its job.
Yeah, it's just nice to be outdoors and seeing friends and just enjoying some fresh air and being out and about.
And it's nice to feel that sense of normalcy now that we're back outside again. Well, thank you so much for your time, you guys. I really appreciate it. What a great conversation we've had. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. It was great to hear about what Toronto had to say about getting their vitamin D. Now we're going to shift the focus onto communities that have been greatly affected by inadequate sun exposure during and after the lockdown. Let's hear from Debbie.
Thanks, Vicky. South of the border, in areas that are reporting on racial data in relation to COVID, the impact of the coronavirus on the Black community has been disproportionately high. Studies found that Black people in the US, and to a lesser extent, South Asian people, are dying from COVID-19 at faster mortality rates. Various studies by the CDC, UK Office for National Statistics, and others have observed an interplay between melanin, vitamin D deficiency, and the severity of COVID-19 clinical outcomes, such as mortality.
A study by the ONS found that Black individuals in Wales and England are 4 times more likely to die upon contracting the virus. In the next clip, we have Dr. Saholt elaborating on the study's findings.
Dark skin and minorities had higher mortality rates, and that it's these very populations that seem to have a higher prevalence of vitamin D deficiency. For example, they cite that data from the UK Office for National Statistics show that Black people in England and Wales were 4 times more likely to die from COVID-19 than were white people. Then they go on to link this with several biologically sound studies. First, they say that vitamin D supports the production of antimicrobial peptides in the respiratory epithelium. Also, that vitamin D helps to reduce the inflammatory response against SARS-CoV-2.
Based on the ONS data, melanin plays at least a partial role in creating enough vitamin D in Black individuals and those with a dark complexion.
A breakdown of race and ethnicity in relation to COVID was released for the first time by the CDC, which shows that almost 1/3 or 30% of patients with COVID are Black Americans, even though they represent only 13% of the US population. However, the federal data was missing racial information for 75% of all cases and did not include any demographic breakdown of deaths. So why is the impact so severe on Black Americans?
It's been said that the coronavirus doesn't discriminate, with the rich, famous and powerful among those who've fallen ill. But that doesn't tell the full story, because some statistics suggest that if you're poor or from an ethnic minority, you're more likely to get sick or even die. COVID-19 is killing Black Americans at a higher rate than anyone else.
You wake up in the morning and, like yesterday, and you kind of worry about what news you're going to get.
Gary Harrell has lost 10 friends or family members to the virus. 8 were Black, 1 Hispanic.
Everyone seems to know someone whose life has been lost because of the virus.
He lives in Louisiana, which, along with the states of Illinois and Michigan, has released preliminary data indicating a disproportionate number of African American victims of the virus. On Monday, more than 70% of fatalities in Louisiana were Black, though they make up only a third of the population there.
These revelations call for a reality check on part of the federal government and healthcare bodies alike to address the systemic barriers in education, economic opportunity, and healthcare access, all of which put racialized communities at a greater risk of COVID. I'm Vicki A. Lee with Internet News, in the heart of it. Back to you, Debbie and Tom.
So I guess what we learned today is that vitamin D plays a crucial role in myriad health functions within the body, but it's not necessarily just how much sun you get, it's how much the body is able to process and to turn into the steroid hormones, and I guess that is affected by other health factors as well.
I think one of my most important takeaways outside of going to the beach is that in the cases where you can't get vitamin D, it's important to supplement it. Countries like Ireland or places that are Nordic have already implemented this in their system, and I think that Canada, considering that we're also kind of north, we could benefit from that too. It's also important for people who are like darker complexion to not take that for granted, because we also need vitamin D. So I think what we should be doing is going to the beach right now.
Yes, it's a strong conclusion. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Tom. All right, so you can conclude.
Guess that concludes this episode of In the News. What a stimulating conversation we've had.
Absolutely riveting. We'd love to hear what you think. Please share your thoughts below, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and share this video.
I'm Thomas Nidgens.
I'm Debbie Deere with Internet News. In the heart of it. Join us next time.